Welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're going small, really small to the world of single-celled organisms.
Smaller than small.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got some excerpts from a book chapter. And, well, it's amazing how complex these little creatures are.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how do they even survive, let alone thrive, without brains or nervous systems or any of that stuff? I mean, that's what we're here to find out.
It really is amazing, isn't it? We always think, to survive, you got to be complex. But these guys are like, nah, you can do a lot with just simplicity.
Yeah, it's true. The book actually says that staying alive for these guys is like a constant challenge.
Oh, absolutely.
Like they're always battling the elements, always trying to keep things balanced inside, even when everything outside's going crazy.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges they face?
Well, imagine you're just one little cell floating in like a tiny drop of water.
Okay, I'm imagining it.
The temperature could swing all over the place. pH could shift. Nutrients could disappear. It's wild. Any one of those things could wipe you out if you're not ready. It's like trying to balance on one of those old-timey scales, with weights being added and taken away constantly.
Sounds super risky.
Mm-hmm.
So how do they do it? The book mentions that they've come up with some really impressive tricks.
Well, they have. One of the biggest ones is adaptation.
Adaptation.
Yeah, they've developed these incredible systems to sense the changes around them and then adjust their internal processes to match.
Okay.
Think about yeast. When there's plenty of oxygen around, they breathe just like us. But if the oxygen runs out, they switch to fermentation.
And that's how we get our bread and beer right.
Exactly.
It's amazing that these tiny little decisions by these tiny organisms end up impacting our lives so much.
Yeah, it really shows how connected all living things are. But back to the adaptations. Think of these single-celled guys as having little logic gates inside them made up of proteins.
Logic gates, huh?
Yeah. These proteins can detect specific molecules like oxygen and then trigger a whole chain reaction of biochemical stuff in response. It's kind of like a biological if this then that,
So even without a brain, they're taking in information and making choices based on what's going on around them.
That's it. They're not just floating around aimlessly. They're reacting to their surroundings in a way that helps them survive. And get this, they can actually anticipate change, not just react to it.
Wait, what? Anticipate?
Yeah.
How is it even possible? Do they have like an internal clock or something?
You could say that. The
Right.
book talks about these internal molecular clocks that run on like a 24-hour cycle.
Wow, really?
Yep. And these clocks help them get ready for the regular shifts in their environment, like day and night.
So like knowing when the sun's coming up.
Exactly. Some of the photosynthetic guys actually ramp up the genes for photosynthesis even before the sun comes up.
So they're not just reacting to the light. They're getting ready for it.
Right.
That's incredible. It's like they have a built-in sense of time. But how does something like that even evolve? I mean, it seems pretty complex for just one cell.
Well, if you think about it from evolution's point of view, the guys who could plan ahead and adjust to their environment had a huge advantage.
Right.
Those who could predict things like sunlight could start making energy more efficiently. And over millions of years, that ability gets hardwired into their biology. It's proof that evolution can shape even the tiniest forms of life.
So these guys are like little machines, incredibly efficient, shaped by evolution to survive. But what about moving around? The book describes all these different ways they get about swimming, crawling, floating. Can't be all random, can it?
Oh, it's definitely not random. They often have a goal in mind, like finding food or avoiding danger. Take E. coli bacteria, for example. They use those little flagellas to move.
See pictures, yeah.
Well, it's not just random wiggling. They combine a sort of random walk strategy with sensing molecules from food.
So it's like they go in one direction, check for food, and if they're getting closer, keep going.
Exactly. If they're not getting closer, they switch directions and try again. This way they can find food even in really tricky environments.
That's so cool. It's like they're making decisions about where to go, even without a brain. But how do they even know what to look for? How do they sense their environment?
They rely on specialized proteins that act like sensors.
Absolutely.
They pick up on certain molecules and stimuli around them. But here's the thing. They're not picking up on everything, just the stuff that's important for survival.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It'd be way too overwhelming to process every little detail.
Right. It's all about efficiency. They have limited resources, so they got to focus on what matters. It's kind of like how we humans only see a small slice of reality. We focus on things like colors, sounds, and smells. We don't see ultraviolet light or hear those ultrasonic bat calls because they're not crucial for us.
That's a great way to put it. So they're like masters of efficiency, focusing on what matters.
Yeah.
The book mentions mosquitoes sensing carbon dioxide to find animals. It's not about the CO2 itself, but what it means. a potential meal.
Exactly. And that's a perfect example of how they use information to make choices. They're gathering data, processing it, and using it to decide what to do, and all this without a brain. It's pretty amazing.
So they're gathering data, but how do they make decisions without a brain? Like, how do they figure out the best course of action? I know it's amazing. It's like they have some kind of intelligence, but it's totally different from ours.
Yeah, it really makes you think about what intelligence even means. The book uses the example of paramecia.
Paramecia.
Yeah, they take in all sorts of information, like where the food is, how hot or cold it is, even where the light is, and then they use all that to decide where to go.
So it's not just about reacting to one thing.
Nope. They're weighing different factors and picking the best move based on what they need and what's going on around them. It's pretty impressive for a creature without a brain.
So they're making like an internal map of their world.
Kind of. Not like a conscious map the way we think of it, but it's like a model of their environment that helps them make smart decisions. Like, say, a paramecium senses food over there, but danger over there. It's got to figure out how to navigate that situation. That's a lot of information processing for something without a nervous system.
The book mentions E. coli and something called gain modulation.
Hmm.
What is that and how does it help them?
That's a cool one. Gain modulation lets E. coli stay really sensitive to even small changes in food concentration, even if there's already plenty around.
Okay.
Imagine you're in a room full of amazing food and you've already eaten a ton. You probably wouldn't care much about finding one last crumb on the floor, right?
Probably not.
But E. coli, even when they're surrounded by food, they can still sense tiny differences in concentration, and they'll move towards even richer spots.
So they're always optimizing, always looking for the best place to eat. That's a pretty smart move for surviving in a world where everyone's competing for resources. Makes you wonder what other crazy tricks these microbes have up their sleeves.
Oh, tons. There's a whole world of incredible adaptations out there. One of the most amazing ones the book talks about is slime mold.
Slime mold. Honestly, not the most impressive name.
I know, right? But slime mold is way more sophisticated than it sounds. Dictyostelium discoideum, that's the scientific name, is a single-celled amoeba that hunts bacteria, kind of like the E. coli we were talking about. They use chemicals to track down their prey and then gobble them up.
Sounds efficient.
Super efficient, but then when food gets scarce, things get really interesting.
That happens. Do they just starve?
Nope. They send out a chemical signal that attracts other slime molds nearby. And guess what? They all come together and form this multicellular slug.
You're kidding? Like thousands of them all joining up to become one organism. That's wild.
Totally. It's a great example of cooperation. And the slug, it's not just sitting there. It can actually move around and head towards better environments. It's like they're pooling their resources to increase their chances of finding food.
It's like a single-celled flash mob. But why become a slug? What's the advantage?
Well, this slug, it's not just a random blob. It can actually move around and head towards better environments. It's a way for these amoebas to pool their resources and increase their chances of finding food when times are tough. And it gets even weirder. Eventually, this slug transforms again. It stops, stands upright, and forms a fruiting body with a stalk and spores on top.
So they go from solo hunters to a group slug and then to a structure that launches spores. That's a lot of coordination for something without a brain. It's like they're making group decisions.
It really makes you rethink what intelligence and cooperation can be. And this leads to a really interesting idea that the book explores information as causation.
Okay, that sounds deep.
Yeah.
How does information actually make things happen in these organisms?
Think of it this way. Information isn't just about how complex a message is. It's about the meaning that comes from it. In a cell, information is often encoded as physical changes, like when a molecule attaches to a receptor.
Right.
That attachment triggers a whole chain of effects that eventually lead to a specific behavior. It's like a domino effect, where each step is caused by the information from the previous step.
So it's not just about the signal itself, it's about how the organism understands and reacts to it.
You got it. And those interpretations and actions are shaped by evolution, by what has helped organisms survive and reproduce over millions of years.
So if a signal leads to a behavior that helps the organism, that connection gets stronger over time.
Exactly. And that's how we start to see purpose and agency even in these single-celled creatures. They're not just blindly reacting, they're acting in ways that have helped them survive and make more of themselves.
It's like they have a kind of built-in knowledge about the world. But does that mean they have actual agency? Are they truly autonomous?
That's a great question. And it's one that's been puzzling scientists and philosophers forever. On one hand, their actions are super sophisticated, and it seems like they're driven by this desire to survive and thrive. But on the other hand, they're following a set of rules that are written in their genes by evolution. It's a real head scratcher.
So are they just tiny robots programmed by their genes? Or is
Okay.
there something more? Is there a spark of individuality, a little bit of free will in these tiny creatures?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the book dives right into these big questions. It lays out arguments for both sides, showing how their goal-driven behavior ultimately comes from natural selection.
Wow, it really makes you question everything you thought you knew about life.
Mhm.
If these tiny organisms can be so complex, what does that tell us about intelligence and the potential for life on other planets?
Yeah, it's like we need a whole new definition of intelligence. We usually think of it as language, abstract thought, problem solving, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But maybe intelligence is more like a spectrum, with different organisms showing different kinds of intelligence that work for them and where they live.
I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. We tend to see intelligence from our own human perspective, but the truth is there are so many different ways to be intelligent. And these single-celled guys who we often think of as simple and basic, they're showing us incredible adaptability, resilience, even a kind of problem solving that's perfect for their needs.
And all this without a nervous system. It blows my mind. It makes you wonder what other kinds of thinking could be out there in the universe. If a single cell could be this smart, just imagine what's possible as life gets more and more complex.
Absolutely. And as things evolve, their relationship with information gets even more complicated. The book talks about how multicellularity and the development of nervous systems allowed for more nuanced responses, delayed reactions, even internal representations of the world.
So they could build a more detailed picture of what's around them and use that information to make decisions over longer periods of time.
Exactly. It's the beginning of what we might call cognitive maps, those internal models of the world that help organisms plan, predict, and make more strategic choices.
It's like the difference between instinctively reacting to a threat and actually planning an escape route.
Perfect analogy. And this ability to hold information inside opens up a whole new world of behavior. It lets organisms go beyond just reacting to their immediate surroundings and start anticipating things, weighing options, and even learning from past experiences.
It's amazing to think that even the simplest life forms can learn and adapt. It really shows how powerful evolution is shaping not just physical stuff, but mental abilities too.
And it all points back to the essential role information plays in shaping life itself. From those little molecular logic gates inside a cell to the complex networks in our brains, life is all about taking in information, processing it, and using it to navigate the world. It's a constant loop. Information shapes behavior. Behavior shapes information.
So what does all this mean? What's the big takeaway from our deep dive into single-celled organisms?
I think the biggest thing is that intelligence and agency aren't just for creatures with big brains and complex bodies. It's a whole spectrum. And even the tiniest organisms can sense, process information, and make decisions that help them survive. It's a good reminder that we humans are just one small part of this massive interconnected web of life. And there's so much we can learn from the other organisms sharing our planet.
It's a powerful reminder that life in all its forms is pretty incredible. It's innovative, it adapts, it's constantly evolving, pushing the limits of what's possible. Who knows what other mysteries are hidden in these microscopic worlds?
That's what makes science so exciting. There's always something new to discover. Every new piece of knowledge opens up new paths to explore, leading us to a deeper understanding of the universe and our place in it.
Well, this deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about. If these single-celled organisms can be so complex, what does that say about intelligence and the possibility of life beyond Earth? It's a question that'll stick with us long after we're done here.
Definitely. That's what makes this field so fascinating. The possibilities are endless.
Well, thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the microscopic world. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the